They say life doesn't warn you when it's about to break your heart. For me, it was an email. Just one. Clear your desk by the end of the day. Human resources will handle the exit paperwork. I stared at the words on my screen, my eyes burning, not because of the text itself, but because of everything it erased in a matter of seconds. 5 years. 5 years of 5 a.m. starts, late-night calls, missing birthdays, giving up weekends, all reduced to one emotionless corporate message. I blinked, hoping the screen would change. It didn't. My name is Nathan Carter. I'm 34 years old, and until about 2 minutes ago, I was the regional team lead at Summit Edge Logistics, one of the highest performing teams in the company. The kind of leader who didn't just run operations. I ran a family. Or so I thought. 3 days. That's all I took. 3 days of approved bereavement leave to bury the man who raised me. And somehow, that made me unreliable in the eyes of my employer. I leaned back in my chair, the worn leather groaning under me. The Boise office was still dim and quiet, just the early blush of dawn beginning to peek through the windows. I'd come in early, hoping to catch up, hoping to show them that even in grief, I still showed up. But they didn't want my dedication. They wanted my silence. They wanted my soul on a leash. The email continued. We need employees who prioritize the company during critical operational periods. As if my father's funeral was a weekend barbecue I could skip. As if mourning a parent was an indulgence, not a necessity of the human heart. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I just froze. In front of me sat the picture of my team from last year's company retreat. Jason, Veronica, Ethan, all of them smiling, holding beers and joking around that I was too serious for vacation. On the shelf beside it sat a small cactus they gave me one Christmas, because even tough guys need something soft to look after, they'd said. The things that made this place home. Gone. Just like that. I reached for my phone, snapped a photo of the email, and forwarded it to my personal account. Not out of spite, but to remember. To remind myself that this was real, that it wasn't just a bad dream. Then I powered down my laptop, my hands trembling just slightly. I stood up and began to pack. One photo frame, one cactus, a few thank you notes from teammates I had mentored, 5 years of late nights, breakthroughs, company wins, reduced to one cardboard box. As the sun spilled into the office, the first people began to trickle in. Tanya from accounting saw me first. Nathan, she asked, confused. What's going on? I looked up at her, forcing a steady voice. I've been let go. Her eyes widened. What? What? I paused, holding her gaze. Because I went to my father's funeral. I saw the shock bloom across her face, followed quickly by rage. That's disgusting, she whispered. That's not right. No, I said, gently wrapping the cactus in newspaper. It's not. But I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to remember it. Because sometimes dignity is louder than fury. I had only just begun folding my company hoodie into the box when I heard soft footsteps behind me. Wait, what the hell is going on? It was Jason, my right hand in every merger, every late-night crisis. His usual grin was gone, replaced by something sharper, something that looked dangerously close to heartbreak. I'm being let go, I said matter-of-factly, not turning around. What? His voice cracked with disbelief. They fired you? For taking 3 days off, I said without looking up. Approved bereavement leave. Jason took a slow step forward, his mouth slightly open. This is bullsh. I raised a hand, cutting him off. Don't. It's done. But we just wrapped the Newbrook merger last month. Your projections alone pushed profit margins up 18%. You did that. Everyone knows it. Apparently not everyone, I said, and finally looked up at him. I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fists clenched at his sides. Jason wasn't one for politics. He was loyal, sharp, and action-driven. And right now, he looked like he was about to march into Dan's office and burn the whole place down. I gave him a sad smile. Let it go. More footsteps echoed across the polished floor. Ethan appeared next, then Louise, Diane, Gabriella, and Kayla, all members of my core team. Their expressions varied: confusion, concern, disbelief, but the unifying thread was anger. Quiet, simmering anger. What's happening? Gabriella asked. I've been let go, I said just like before. Veronica, our client relations queen, appeared last. She stood frozen at the end of the row, her eyes glassy. Because of the funeral? I nodded once. That was all it took. A silence settled over us like fog, heavy and slow, pressing against the windows, the desks, the air. No one moved. No one knew what to say. I still don't understand, Diane whispered. Who does that? Who punishes someone for burying their dad? I gently set a framed photo into the box, pressing the flap closed over the memories. Dan does, I said, as if summoned by the mere mention of his name. I heard the sharp heel clicks echo from the hallway. Dan Weaver, face drawn and mouth pinched, stood there like a judge handing down a sentence. His eyes swept over my gathered team and narrowed. I need everyone back at their desks, he said curtly. Now. No one moved. His voice rose just slightly. Now. Still no one budged. I turned, picking up the box and meeting his gaze head on. He lowered his voice, stepping toward me. This could have been handled more professionally. Nathan, you could have waited until the end of the day. I tilted my head. Like you waited to talk to me in person before sending the email? After approving the leave yourself? His jaw worked in silence, but no response came. Just a tight nod and a murmured, HR is expecting you. I nodded. I won't make a scene, but you should remember this moment, Dan. One day it might matter. As I walked toward the elevator, the box in my hands felt both heavier and lighter than it should have. Behind me, I felt their eyes, my team, burning with unspoken words. I didn't stop to hear them, but I knew what they wanted to say, and I knew it wouldn't end here. The HR office looked like it had been built by people who wanted you to forget you were human. White walls, no photos, no soul, just policies and signatures and polite indifference. Barbara Kent, the newest addition to HR, greeted me with a sympathetic half-smile. She looked too gentle to be part of this machine. Her hands trembled slightly as she slid the separation packet across the desk. I'm sorry about this, she said, and I'm truly sorry about your father. Thank you, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady as I flipped through the paperwork. 2-week severance, a non-disparagement clause, 6 months of non-compete. This seems sudden, Barbara said quietly. Was there any performance issue flagged before this? I pulled out my phone, opened the photo of the termination email, and slid it across to her. Her eyes widened as she read. 3 days of bereavement leave. This is the only document. No warnings. No meeting. Just that. She frowned, jotting something in her legal pad. Would you mind if I verify a few things with legal? I nodded. As she stepped out, I stared out the window. From this floor, I could see the Boise River threading its way through the city, gentle, winding, resilient. My father used to take me fishing there. The river moves, Nathan, he used to say, but the rocks stay steady. Be like the rocks. I never understood the full weight of those words, until now. Barbara returned, her face unreadable. Legally, they can do this, she said. Idaho is an at-will state. But, off the record, this isn't right. If you want to take action, I don't, I said, signing the papers. But thank you. She nodded slowly, as if silently apologizing for something she couldn't undo. When I stepped back out into the main office, the entire floor had gone still. My team was gathered near my desk again, like a farewell vigil. Not one of them had gone back to work. Not one of them had looked away. I gave them a small smile, the last I would wear as their leader. And then I walked out into the warm September sun, carrying 5 years of memories in a box and the fire of something far more valuable in my chest. Not rage, not revenge, clarity. Something was shifting, not just in me, but in them too. The moment I stepped outside, the air hit different. It wasn't just the warmth of early September or the feel of sunlight filtering through the trees lining the parking lot. It was the stillness, the kind that wraps itself around you after something irreversible has happened. My father was gone. My job was gone, but I was still standing. I set the box gently in the trunk of my car and sat behind the wheel, not ready to drive, not ready to move. Just breathing. That's when my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, thinking it was a recruiter or some HR robot offering me a chat about next steps. But something made me answer. Nathan Carter? A deep voice came through, crisp and confident. This is Hank Fleming, CEO of Vertex Transport Systems. My heart paused, just for a second. Hank Fleming wasn't just another name in the industry. He was a force. We'd met briefly at a logistics summit the year before, shared a drink, swapped war stories. He'd reached out since then, casually, persistently. I knew he respected my work. I heard about what happened, he said, his voice gentler now. Word moves fast in our world. I leaned back, staring out at the Boise skyline. That's one way to put it. I'll cut to it, Hank continued. I want you on my team. I've been wanting that for a while now. But this might be the right time. We're expanding our Pacific Northwest division. We need someone who knows the territory, the strategy, someone like you. My fingers drummed the steering wheel. I appreciate that. I really do. But I have a non-compete. 6 months. 300-mile radius. There was a pause, then a small laugh. I've seen Summit Edge's contracts. That clause is overly broad and likely unenforceable. Our legal team's already reviewed it. And frankly, if they want to challenge it, we'll cover the legal fees. The offer stunned me. Not just because it was generous, but because it came with something Summit Edge never really gave me. Respect. I need to think, I said, careful not to sound too eager. It's been a day. Of course, Hank replied. Take the weekend. We'll talk specifics Monday morning. That evening, I met Jason and Veronica at a quiet pub just outside downtown. Riverfront Brewing, the kind of place where the wood creaks when you walk and the air smells like stories. They showed up together. Their expressions, weary, furious, worried, said everything before they even sat down. You okay? Veronica asked, sliding into the booth across from me. I'm getting there, I said, wrapping my hand around a glass of water. Just try and process. Jason leaned in. Dan's already falling apart. No one can find the Henderson files. System access hasn't been transferred. People are panicking. I almost laughed. Sounds like a Dan problem. No, Veronica said firmly. It's bigger. People are furious, Nate. Not just our team, the entire floor. They're scared. If they could do this to you, the golden boy of Summit Edge, what's stopping them from doing it to anyone? I stayed quiet. I didn't want to fan the flames. But I couldn't deny it. Something was unraveling. And it wasn't me. Jason checked his phone. Emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Dan's calling everyone in. On a Saturday. That's never happened. Veronica nodded. It's about the Wilson account. They're asking for you directly. No one knows how to navigate your strategy files. I said nothing. My files were all on the server, of course, but my organizational system wasn't exactly intuitive. Not because I was hiding anything, just thorough. I should head out, I said, finishing my drink. Early meeting tomorrow. Jason stood up too, but then hesitated. Nate, if you did go to Vertex, hypothetically speaking, would they be hiring? I looked between them. I could already see it in their eyes. The disillusionment, the betrayal, the fire starting to burn. Hypothetically, I said with a slow nod. They're expanding. That was all they needed to hear. Saturday morning, I sat in a small law office downtown. Mahogany bookshelves, diploma-lined walls, the kind of place where battles are prepared behind closed doors. Across from me was Vincent Torres, employment attorney and warhorse of the local legal scene. A friend had recommended him. I handed him the contract. They let me go after 3 days of approved bereavement leave. I just want to know if this non-compete holds water. He read in silence for a while, then removed his glasses. This is textbook wrongful termination, he said. Breach of good faith. No performance warnings. Just gone? Because you attended your father's funeral? I'm not looking to sue, I said. I just want clarity. He nodded. This non-compete is absurd. 6 months, 300 miles? That's not a clause. That's a trap. Most courts won't uphold it, especially under these conditions. So it's safe to move forward? I asked. Proceed with caution, he said, but don't let it keep you from living. If Vertex is willing to back you legally, I'd say it's a solid path. I stood, shook his hand, and stepped out into the morning light. The river wasn't far. I could almost hear my father's voice again. Let the river do the rushing. You? Stay steady. And I knew what I had to do next. Monday morning arrived with a strange kind of clarity. The sun shone hard through my apartment blinds, and for the first time in days, I felt something other than loss. I felt ready. My phone rang at exactly 9 a.m. Hank Fleming. "Nathan," he said, "ready to talk?" I took a breath. "I accept your offer." There was a pause. Then the warmth returned to his voice. "Fantastic. We're thrilled to have you. But I have one condition," I added, holding firm. "I want to build my own team. If my former colleagues from Summit Edge apply to Vertex, I want them to receive fair and serious consideration." Hank chuckled, low and confident. "Absolutely. If they're anything like you, we'd be lucky to have them." That afternoon, I signed my contract at Vertex's headquarters, Division Director of Pacific Northwest Operations. A role with more reach, more autonomy, and more respect than anything I ever had at Summit Edge. The salary? 40% more. Better benefits. A signing bonus that made my jaw tighten just slightly when I saw it. I didn't smile for the money, though. I smiled because for the first time in years, I wasn't walking into a company with something to prove. I was walking in with a purpose to fulfill. When I stepped out of the HR office at Vertex, my phone buzzed with 7 new messages. Jason, Veronica, Ethan, Louise, Diane, Gabriella, Kayla. All of them wanted to meet for coffee. Privately. Tuesday morning, we met at a little cafe downtown, tucked between a used bookstore and a plant shop. The kind of place Summit Edge employees rarely wandered into. I was the first one there. Jason joined me, then Veronica. One by one, the others arrived. We pushed 2 tables together until the space felt like our old bullpen. Tight, familiar, buzzing with unspoken understanding. "Summit Edge is imploding," Ethan said, sitting down without even saying hello. "Dan's losing it," Gabriella added. "He's micromanaging every breath we take. Paul is on his back. Clients are asking questions." "The Wilson account?" I asked. "They're threatening to pull out," Veronica said. "They specifically asked why you're not managing their renewal." We didn't know what to say. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence thicken, letting the reality sink in. I didn't have to say a word. They already knew. "We heard you accepted the offer at Vertex," Jason said, eyes steady on mine. I nodded. "Yes. We want to come with you," Veronica said. No hesitation. The others all nodded. I looked at them one by one. "You all have stable positions. Good salaries. Benefits. Are you sure?" "What stability?" Louise said sharply. "They fired you for going to your father's funeral. None of us are safe." "Vertex is hiring," I said carefully. "I can't promise anything, but I can refer you." Gabriella pulled out a stack of papers. "We already applied. Yesterday. All 7 of us." I blinked. "You didn't even talk to me first." "We didn't have to," Kayla said simply. "We trust you, Nate. Where you go, we go." I looked down at my coffee, suddenly unsure how to process the surge in my chest, a mix of gratitude, vindication, and something else, responsibility. Not just to myself anymore, but to them. By Friday, all 7 of them had received and accepted offers for Vertex. We met that evening at the same cafe, but this time we weren't whispering over coffee. We were laughing over beer and celebration cake. To new beginnings, Veronica toasted, and to Nathan, Jason added, who showed us what real leadership looks like. I raised my glass, clinked it with theirs. And to all of you, who didn't just follow a title, but followed a mission. Across the table, I could see it. They weren't just relieved, they were alive again. Purpose restored. Loyalty reciprocated. At that moment, I didn't feel like a man who had been cast out of company. I felt like a man who had just built something better. Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. My phone lit up with a call I didn't expect, but somehow wasn't surprised by either. Paula McCormick, Regional Manager, Summit Edge. I let it ring twice before answering. "Good morning, Paula," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "What can I do for you?" There was a hesitation on the other end. Then her voice, calm but strained. "Nathan, we need to talk. I no longer work for Summit Edge." I reminded her evenly. "I know," she said, "but this morning I received 7 resignation letters. All from your former team. All effective immediately. Care to explain?" I paused for a moment, letting the weight of her words settle into the silence. "I'm not sure what kind of explanation you're looking for," I said finally. "I don't work there anymore." "They're all going to Vertex," she continued, her voice tightening. where you just started as division director. That doesn't look coincidental. I leaned back in my chair, calm. People make career choices for a lot of reasons, Paula. Maybe you should ask Dan why your top-performing team decided to leave all at once. Silence. Just breathing. Then, this is about your termination, isn't it? I didn't answer. I reviewed the situation, she went on. Dan didn't consult me before letting you go. If I'd been in the office, I would never have approved it. That's between you and him, I replied. Though I do wonder why a regional manager wasn't informed before terminating a team lead. He claimed it was an urgent performance issue, Paula said, that it couldn't wait until I returned from Seattle. I trusted his judgment. I let that hang in the air for a few seconds too long, just long enough to make the point without saying it aloud. Finally, she softened her tone. Nathan, I'm prepared to offer you your position back, with a 10% raise. A formal apology. We need your leadership. I didn't blink. I've accepted another position. We'll match what they're paying you, plus 15%. It's not about the money. Then what would it take? I looked out the window. The sun was just rising above the downtown skyline. It would take time travel, I said. Back to the day my father died. And anyone, at Summit Edge showing basic human decency instead of punishing me for grieving. Dead silence. I need to go, Paula. Today's my first day at Vertex. I don't want to be late. Your non-compete, she started. Feel free to have your legal team contact mine, I said, my voice sharp but calm. They might want to review the circumstances of my termination first. And then I hung up. I arrived at Vertex's offices early. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. For the first time in years, I wanted to be part of something again. Hank met me in the lobby with a wide grin. We're already interviewing your former team, he said. They're fantastic. Smart, loyal, organized, everything a company wants. Thanks for taking them seriously, I said. They were never just my coworkers. They were my foundation. Well, Hank said, Summit Edge's loss is our future. 2 days later, I got another call. This time from Barbara Kent, the HR rep from Summit Edge. Her voice was quiet. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Dan Weaver has been placed on administrative leave. Paul has launched an investigation into how your termination was handled. The board is involved. I said nothing, letting the weight of that news settle in. They're reviewing all terminations from the past year, Barbara continued. Your case triggered red flags. Losing your whole team to a competitor? That got the board's attention. Thanks for the heads up. And Nathan, she added gently, I still have that cactus from your desk. Thought you might want it back. I'll send it to your new office. It deserves better light. And so do you. By Friday, every single member of my former team had accepted positions at Vertex. That night, we gathered at a small riverside restaurant. The kind of place where laughter echoed off the brick walls and the beer tasted better with a second round. To new beginnings, Veronica toasted, raising her glass. To Nathan, Jason added, for showing us what leadership really means. I lifted my glass, feeling the weight of it, not in ounces but in meaning. To all of you, I said, you didn't just follow me. You followed what mattered. Outside, the Boise River flowed calmly in the twilight. And I remembered my father's words. The river moves, Nathan, but the rocks stay steady. 3 months after my termination email, I stood at the front of Vertex's largest conference room, presenting quarterly results to the executive board. I wasn't nervous. I was proud. The screen behind me displayed numbers that spoke louder than anything I could say. 30% growth in our division. 4 major client acquisitions, 3 of which were former Summit Edge accounts. Operational efficiency improvements that had cut costs by 22%. Every bullet point was a quiet reminder. We didn't just survive, we rebuilt something stronger. When I finished, the room was still for a moment, then erupted in applause. Hank Fleming rose from his seat, clapping with a proud grin. Exceptional work, Nathan, he said. You and your team have exceeded every projection. I didn't take full credit. I couldn't. I turned to the row of faces seated beside me. Jason, now managing his own client portfolio. Veronica, whose strategy overhaul had improved client retention by 40%. And the rest of my team who had stepped into their new roles and made them bigger than any title. My team deserves the credit, I said. They were underestimated. Now, they're undeniable. Later that day, I returned to my office and found them waiting, all 7 of them. A cake sat in the middle of the room with frosting that read, 3 months free. Happy Independence Day. Jason grinned. It's been exactly 3 months since we all jumped ship together. We figured we should celebrate. I laughed for the first time in days, a real belly-deep laugh. You're ridiculous. But happy, Veronica added. And it was true. They were thriving in ways that Summit Edge never allowed. With more autonomy, better tools, clearer purpose. But above all, they were valued. Not for their productivity metrics, but for who they were. That afternoon, a news alert buzzed on my phone. Summit Edge Logistics announces restructuring amid client exodus. I showed the headline to the group. I heard they lost the Hernandez contract last week. Ethan said, passing around slices of cake. That's 20% of their Pacific Northwest revenue. Dan's gone, Louise added. Cleared out his office Friday. No one even said goodbye. Paula was reportedly trying to hold the company together, but the seams were splitting. The rot wasn't just in Dan. It was in the culture they had allowed to grow. I didn't feel pleasure watching it all unravel. What I felt was justice. They weren't failing because we left. They were failing because they forgot why we stayed in the first place. Later that week, I received a small package at the office. Inside was a cactus, slightly bigger now, but still the same one from my old desk. Attached was a note in familiar handwriting. Rescue this from your desk. Thought you might want it back. Summit Edge closes for good next week. Barbara. I placed the cactus on my windowsill where it could soak in the afternoon sun. It looked healthier now. Like me. That evening, I drove to the Boise River, the place my father used to take me fishing. I stood on the bank, the same one where we had cast lines into the current year after year. The water moved steadily past the rocks, the way it always had. I get it now, Dad, I said, voice barely above a whisper. The river rushes, but the rocks stay steady. I stayed steady, and in doing so, I had built something better, not by fighting back with anger, but by leading forward with purpose. 6 months after joining Vertex, I received a promotion. Executive Vice President of Operations for the entire Northwest region. My division had become the company's crown jewel, efficient, innovative, and home to the highest employee satisfaction score across the entire organization. Each member of my former Summit Edge team had been promoted as well. Jason now led his own division. Veronica had redesigned our entire client relations framework. Ethan had doubled logistics efficiency in under 2 quarters. And so on, each one thriving not because they were given power, but because they had been trusted with it. Somewhere along the way, my revenge had stopped being about Summit Edge. It had become something far greater. My revenge was in building the kind of workplace where no one would be punished for grieving, where leadership meant empowering, not controlling, where success wasn't just measured in revenue, but in respect. 6 months after I joined Vertex, I received an unexpected lunch invitation from Paula McCormick. She had left Summit Edge 2 months earlier, right after the company's final restructuring announcement. Rumors floated that she had taken a role with a management consulting firm, one that specialized in fixing broken corporate cultures. I wasn't sure if I wanted to see her, but curiosity and closure has its own gravity. We met at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Boise River, the kind of place where the view was better than the menu. Paula arrived right on time, looking different, more relaxed, softer, like someone who had finally let go of something heavy. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. You didn't have to ask twice, I replied. I was curious. She nodded slowly. I wanted to apologize. Properly. You weren't the one who fired me, I reminded her. No, she admitted. But I created the environment that allowed it to happen. That caught me off guard. There was no corporate spin, no defensive tone, just quiet accountability. After you and your team left, Paula said, everything unraveled. The board brought in consultants to figure out what went wrong. She paused, then offered a wry smile. Let's just say, the report wasn't flattering. I didn't gloat. I just listened. Summit Edge was acquired by Meridian Shipping, she said. But really, they only bought the client list and the physical assets. The culture, the leadership, none of that was worth saving. I nodded. It didn't surprise me. What about Dan? I asked. She looked down at her glass of water. Still unemployed, last I heard. His reputation, well, your story traveled. People talk. I raised an eyebrow. I never told anyone. You didn't have to, she said. The truth has a way of finding its way out, especially when it's this clean. We sat in silence for a moment, letting the river do the talking. I've learned a lot from all of this, Paula continued. About leadership, about consequences, about the kind of culture I helped shape, even if I didn't realize it at the time. I nodded slowly. The worst part wasn't the firing. It was realizing that everything I'd built, the team, the trust, the loyalty, didn't mean anything to the people in charge. But it did, she said, voice firmer now. It did, just not to the right people. That stayed with me. As we finished our meal, Paula hesitated, then finally asked the question that had clearly been sitting in her chest all afternoon. Was it worth it? Walking away quietly instead of fighting back. I thought of Jason and his new team. Veronica's industry awards. Ethan's innovations. Our quarterly growth. Our retention rate. The culture we'd built. Respectful, driven, and kind. I thought of the cactus on my windowsill, now twice its original size, thriving in better light. I thought of my father, standing in the middle of the Boise River, telling me to stay steady. And I said, without hesitation, yes, the results speak for themselves. 1 year to the day after that cold email ended my career at Summit Edge, I received another message, this time from Hank. Executive promotion confirmed. Your new title, EVP, Northwest Region. My office window overlooked the very riverbank where my father once taught me patience. In a glass reflection, I saw the man I had become, steady, tested, and deeply proud. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Dan. Not at Summit Edge. Not even at the past. Because the past hadn't beaten me. It had refined me. That afternoon, I gathered my team in the main conference room. We just onboarded 3 new clients, 2 of them ex-Summit Edge contracts. After the meeting, Jason pulled me aside. You ever think about what would have happened if you'd stayed? I looked at him, then at the people smiling down the hallway, the new interns asking questions, the open doors. No, I said, because this never would have existed. My revenge had never been in ruining Summit Edge. My revenge was in building something so good it made what they did irrelevant. A place where grief wasn't punished, where leaders grew other leaders, where people mattered more than metrics. The river still rushes, but I've learned how to stand like the rocks, steady, grounded, unmoved, and somehow, in standing still, I moved everything that mattered. If you made it this far, thank you. Maybe you've been where I've been, thrown aside after years of loyalty, told that your grief made you inconvenient, made it feel like your humanity was a flaw. But I hope this story reminded you of something important. You are not replaceable. Your values, your leadership, your steady presence, those things matter. And if someone out there can't see that, then maybe it's time to stop proving your worth to those who benefit from ignoring it. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is not in tearing anything down, but in quietly building something better. A workplace, a life, a future. So if this story moved you, if it gave you even a flicker of strength, back-end index pointing right, do me a favor. Leave a comment. Share what moment in your life made you feel disposable and how you stayed steady. Hit like if you believe good people deserve better. And if you want more stories like this, stories that remind us we can always rebuild, subscribe and turn on the bell, because the river will keep moving, my friend. But you could be the rock.